Part of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. And I'm your host, your neighbor, David Kwiatkowski. So glad to be with you once again across the Sunshine State, coming to you live, ready to take on the news in a unique perspective. One that's guided by anthropology, history, mythology, and the personhood revolution that Jesus inaugurated over 2,000 years ago, and people are just now starting to scratch the surface of its implications. We're going to apply those implications on today's headline, because this is how we break through the noise and confusion. We have to lead people out of the confusion, out of the chaos. We don't want to sow chaos. We want beauty and order. Now what's interesting is what the establishment will call chaos is actually a good thing, because when something is falling apart, when a paradigm is losing its sway over people, it will look chaotic for a time. It will look chaotic when people are losing faith in institutions that have been built on lies. So we have to buckle up. This is not an autopilot. You know, we think of life and history. We think of it like, like getting on a ride at a theme park. All you have to do is just get into the ride, and then you sit and it's on autopilot. All your safety is taken care of. You know, you just got to follow instructions, right? They say put the harness on the right way, you do it. They say don't do this, you do it. And that's how most folks deal with life and the progress of history. They look at things and they say, okay, I'm going to get on this ride and let's see what goes. Let's see what happens. Everybody else is running the show and I'll just do my job as a consumer. And the same thing happens for people's perspective on history. They go along and they say somebody's going to fix it. Some Tesla will show up. Some Hercules will show up. Some Samson will show up. Some, if you're a statist, you're going to say some FDR is going to show up. Some Castro is going to show up if you're into that kind of thing, right? William Wallace, if you like that kind of image that we have about him in our pop culture, thanks to Braveheart and things like that. And somebody else is going to fix things. Somebody else will, unfold history, and I just got to go along and put my buckle on, and that's it. No, that's not how it works. History is not on autopilot. Your life is not on autopilot. It requires human agency. It requires your involvement. It requires you to put real hard work into it. I am amazed that the institutions that are falling apart around us, things like the lying media, things like these failed government bureaucracies, our failed foreign policy of endless wars, empire. I'm surprised they have lasted as long as they have. But we have to be vigilant and we have to be discerning in how we build from here. Do we stoop to violence? Do we stoop to, there's two types of violence. One is the violence of a mob. We see a headline today that 59% of Americans worried about voter fraud. The other headline is showing that people are having violence. There's been some violence against different rivals politically. So there's two types of violence. There's the violence that we do when we vote and do things that we should never do to our neighbors, but we do it through the cloak of a ballot, a hidden veil that separates us from our neighbor. in which we can do things that we know good and well are not right for us to do as individuals, but somehow we think we can get away with it if we go along with the crowd and vote for people to do violent, awful things to our neighbors and say, oh, that's policy. Oh, that's the public good. That's just religion. When you hire someone, when you go into a ballot box and you vote to punish a neighbor, tax somebody, grab this from somebody, take this, eminent domain, or, the situation where people have their resources taken from them left and right through inflation and taxation, through subsidies, through the debt that is accumulated because of the massive government spending that people vote for in anonymity. If you do that, you're participating in a religious fantasy that has real world consequences. And the fantasy is that you're not responsible. The fantasy is that you can hide behind a crowd in a veil and do awful, immoral things to your neighbor by voting for attacking the rich or taking from this group or banning this trade and making you have to do a license or this thing or that thing to get along with doing the service. Those are things that are always going to put a burden on your neighbor that you yourself would not want to carry out and implement directly, but you think that you have a right to, not you, but the general you that goes along with this mythology of statism and worship of government, that they think that they can get away with doing things to the neighbor that they know good and well are not right to do as individuals. That is a mythology because you are believing that you didn't actually do what you actually did. You hired somebody, they said they were going to do X, Y, and Z policy, which will attack this group or this person. And then they do it. And then you say, I didn't do that. That's the will of the people. That's democracy. That's the sacredness of our voting system. That's whatever little trope that you come up with. Those are all just modern versions of names of gods. Because in the past, people would come around as a crowd and they would sacrifice somebody, punish somebody, abuse somebody, send someone over a cliff, cast someone out of a crowd, humiliate them, parade them around the street. Thousands of years ago, that's what happened all the time. And nobody believed that they were responsible for their participation in the action. They just said, no, this was the power of the gods. We were just compelled by the gods. The gods did it, not us. That's the same thing we have going on in our election system today. And it's gotten to the point of insanity where we don't even know if people are actually real people are voting in this madness, this undifferentiation, where the dead are allegedly voting. And people that, aren't even existing perhaps, or people have heard some reports of some people voting multiple times. And that's not going to fly in a free society. That's not going to fly in a society of law and order. That's not going to fly in a society that cares about itself and respects itself. If you don't respect yourself, nobody else is going to respect you, and you're going to continually create the hell of a society that we are walking into. We have people today who spend generation after generation waiting and expecting the state to save them. Not just those in the blue states. There's a lot of red states, too, that depend on prisons being built in the prison industrial complex, keeping their town fed and employed, or folks in the military who are always building a military industrial complex, always building bullets. For what? For what? Whenever you create all that extra largesse, as Smedley Butler said, you create the incentive for people who have no skin in the game, the nanny state DC hacks in the swamp, to use all those toys to get people into new regime change wars, because there's billions and billions and billions of dollars that they get to reap as a reward. And the power is the most important thing. They love the feeling that they can control people. They love it. They like to feel like little gods up there in DC. They say, oh, we're going to get rid of Syria. Remember when they had all the photos of John Kerry and Nancy Pelosi and everybody taking photos, trying to pose all happy with Assad? They prop up these people and then they take them out like mafia. And then they want to tell low information people back home, oh, we did this for the children. Yeah, they don't show you all the children that were hurt and destroyed by the drone strikes that America initiated, by the unleashing of Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra and ISIS and other groups in these regions on our behalf as our alleged allies. That's so insane, but they expect you to not respect yourself enough and not to respect your fellow neighbor and your fellow human being at all, so that you will go along with whatever they say. And I am really disappointed with those on the left who knew that the Iraq war was a monster, but because their team has told them, hey, we're going to do exactly the mess that we did in Iraq, we're going to do it in Syria, but because it's our team, it'll be okay. These people just lose their mind and say, yeah, that sounds great, let's do it. To the point where now all the Bush-style neocon warmongers have allied and have been allied with the Biden team, and they are setting this table to try to reinstitute globalism, destruction of our wealth, and the creation of a perpetual interventionist policy back on the table. Good news is Trump has put in Colonel Douglas McGregor as a senior advisor for the new acting Secretary of Defense, who replaced the one, Mark Esper, who did not want to remove troops from Afghanistan. See, the Democrats in the media, they like to act like they're the party of the victim. They're the party of the oppressed. But look what they do. They are imperialists. They are propagandists for war. The Jake Tapper and other folks are lamenting the loss of Mark Esper because Jake Tapper is a sellout little puppet who spends his entire mouth using it to sell people on staying in war. And then he has the audacity to tell us that he cares about people of color. What about the people of color in Afghanistan who don't like drone strikes and being perpetually occupied? How about the people in our military of all backgrounds who don't want to be used for a lie, for profit? Jake Tapper losers don't care. They just want to, we have to stay in the war forever. Why? Because that's what my editor told me to say. I mean, these people have no freaking conscience. They have no freaking intellect. These are low resolution minds. And you have to tune them out. You have to turn them off, tune them out. Do not let them intimidate you. Do not let them dehumanize your neighbor, whether it's across the street or in foreign policy around the world. We'll be back in just a moment with more. I'm David Gronowski. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. We'll see you in just a second. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Kwiatkowski. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Kwiatkowski will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Kwiatkowski. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Kwiatkowski.com. Over 28 years in practice. Kwiatkowski, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Kwiatkowski, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman. Here's one thing you can scratch off your to-do list without going anywhere, without any out-of-pocket cost to you, and even get up to $150 cash back. Get that crack in your windshield fixed by calling Auto Glass America. They'll come to you, and with comprehensive insurance coverage, there's no cost to you. Call Auto Glass America now and fix that pane in the glass with premium glass and a lifetime warranty. Call 813-96-GLASS, 813-96-GLASS. Auto Glass America.
Hello, this is David Kwiatkowski with A Neighbor's Choice. I've got a mission for you. I'm a big believer in eating family farm-raised, high-quality grass-fed beef. That's why I'm a frequent customer of White Oak Pasture, a sixth-generation beautiful farm in southwest Georgia. Support sustainable, delicious meat of the highest quality. Ask for White Oak Pasture's beef at your local grocery here in Florida, or go to whiteoakpastures.com, and first-time customers get 20% off on purchases with our exclusive coupon code NEIGHBOR. So that's what we have to deal with. We have to deal with the word games that confuse people. People love to build up heroes and then tear them down. They love to build people up and tear them down. In the ancient world, you had those stories and myths where gods, these pantheon of gods in various cultures, they had a similar pattern in their life, that the story of their life. These characters, in their early stages, they would be accused of doing all kinds of taboos and bad behavior that disrupted boundaries and order, discipline, and respect for people's differences. They were noticed for being, these gods across the world were known for being very trickster-like, to put it that way, upending rules, causing chaos. And then, if you notice a pattern in these myths, these ancient gods in their later stories are shown being saviors of, there's a war or a storm or a plague, and somehow these gods offer themselves up, sometimes sacrificing their lives, or sometimes they demand somebody else sacrifice somebody to them, and they save people from calamity, from social chaos. So these gods have a kind of capricious ambivalence. They're both naughty and bad, mischievous and sowers of chaos, but they're also bring an order back from the chaos and are attributed with being the saviors of some of these ancient communities, these archaic societies as well. And today, because of Christianity has exposed that. It's exposed that actually those gods were not really gods. They were just the crowd. They were just people projecting their own violence that they do against scapegoats, that they do against people that they're jealous of, that they envy, projecting it into the sky and saying it's an ancestor or a god that made them do it. In reality, it was just a shared sense of transcendence they felt in unanimously blaming someone and destroying someone and feeling better about themselves after they do it. But Jesus exposed that. And today, it's almost like the reverse. Today, we have this ability where we love underdog stories. That's because of Jesus. We have, in America, one of the biggest things that we love is underdog stories. We love people who go against the odds. They come from nothing. You know, you hear that story. My dad or my mom or my grandma or my grandpa came over here with $1 in their pocket and a piece of chewed bubble gum. That's all they had, and now they're a millionaire or whatever, right? You hear that story. That's the American dream. That's the idea of aspirational advancement. In the ancient world, you didn't have that. If you were born in a certain family or a certain class, you stayed there. You were not allowed to move up. In certain circumstances, maybe. But the standard of society was you were born and destined to stay where you were supposed to be on the pecking order. But because Jesus unleashed this world where we have a different kind of story driving our imaginations, our law, our culture, our social thinking, Now we have a world in which people can come from nothing and make something of themselves. That doesn't make, of course, it's still rigged. Of course, the reality is the forces of those old sacrificial viciousness and violence still persist in our rigged economic system where government and corporations work together to exploit people. But nevertheless, it's actually possible to be from something with not much to coming up and having a lot. But what people like to do is they like to take people who are these underdogs, and then they like to find out, oh, you actually violated some taboos. You're not the Christ figure that we thought you were. You see that all the time. They had the recent story of the pastor from Hillsong who, was built up as some kind of hero god or something, and then all of a sudden he's exposed as, oh, another fraud, another bad choice has been made by somebody. And people are used to that story of being raised up and then torn down. Look what they did to Elvis. He's the king. Literally, they call him the king, and then they fetishize they glorify the grotesque of his death and the circumstances of his death. And that's something that we have to get a real reckoning about. We have to understand why we do it, and we have to learn how to stop participating in it. There was a time in which Republicans actually believed George W. Bush was the best thing since sliced bread, right? And then all of a sudden they tear him down. Why don't you just have a principled perspective? Follow your principles, and you don't have to deify someone or tear them down. You just realize, no, those are bad policies. That is not what we want. I'm not signing up for that kind of globalist, expansionary, imperialist type mindset that is very popular with globalists, the crowd that W came from. And the same thing goes for Trump. There's this, people raise him up. Oh, they say, I'm joking, oh, he's a God emperor as a joke, on the internet culture. But then they want to raise him up, and then they're like, oh, look, you're fired. Look, oh, and now I'm not saying that his own supporters are doing that, but it is interesting to see how they want to pull people up and then cast them down. And so we have to be able to be on guard for this. It is not something that we should participate in. It is a distraction to deify people, and we all say we're not, but we all do in various ways. We all admire people too much. We idolize people. We bring people to a pedestal that they can't possibly fulfill, and we believe that they have something that is just superior to us, and we just, melt our identity under their identity, and we build little cultures around these figures, these role models, popularity, people, pop culture, stars, politicians, whatever. And we have to be on guard against this, because it's not going to get us the results that we want. It's going to continue to lead us into chaos, because when you have cults of personality and when you have this building of people up and tearing them down, you're not able to actually get into the field of action yourself and roll up your sleeves and be a really tremendous, excellent person yourself. Too busy sitting in the stands of life, laughing at someone falling, or saying, oh, I knew they were fake. I knew it was all going to come out, or whatever. That's not the way we're going to have success. We can't idolize people, can't tear them down. And in the world of Jesus, that's the way it goes now. That's the way we create these Jesus imitating little figures that we Jesus little archetypes that we create in pop culture and politics. We say, oh, that's our savior, but then they do something. So, oh my goodness, oh, I knew they were a fake imposter. Well, how about you stop idolizing people and learn to see people as just like yourself? Love your neighbor as yourself, not more than you, not less than you. Less than you, you treat them like awful. More than you, and you idolize them, and that's another way of treating people like awfully, because it turns into scapegoating. The line between admiration and murder is very thin, Renee Girard said. We'll be back with more in just a moment. Kwiatkowski will join us to talk about Veterans Day.
No matter which party you serve, today we unite to serve our veterans.
The cost of freedom is always high, but Americans have always paid it. And one path we shall never choose, and that is the path of surrender or submission.
Service members and their families just sacrifice so much to protect this country.
On this Veterans Day, we pause to say thank you. News Talk 1040, WHBO.
A week
week after Election Day, undecided states still counting early and provisional ballots. The Trump campaign filing new lawsuits, even as others are dismissed or decided there is no evidence of widespread voter fraud in courts. ABC's Karen Travers has more on what's next.
President-elect Joe Biden insists his team is moving ahead with its transition into the White House. But President Trump is still refusing to concede the race, and the Biden transition team is not getting the standard support from the outgoing administration. Experts say this transfer of power period is when the nation is at its most vulnerable.
Health experts say the nation is at a dire point in the coronavirus outbreak, with cases and hospitalizations surging across the country, spreading out of control in some areas like El Paso, Texas, Ohio, Utah, and North Dakota. New York State also preparing for another COVID wave. The governor today announcing that starting Friday, bars and restaurants will close earlier and limiting gatherings at homes to 10 people. Michelle Franzen, ABC News.
A Neighbor's Choice returns. I'm David Gronowski, your host. And looking at some of the comments, our website, by the way, is aneighborschoice.com. That's aneighborschoice.com. You can go on our video live stream on Facebook or YouTube if you're at home or you want to check the video. We'll be glad to always check in with some of the commenters here. Sean says, thanks for all the honest assessment of the current situation with the president. Thank you, Sean. Derek says, I hope he, referring to President Trump, ends all the wars. That would be absolutely amazing. I think given the bureaucratic pushback that has happened, I doubt that he'll be able to do all that, but let's see how much he can get done. He's got Colonel Doug McGregor, who I've had on the program a lot, who is a serious person about ending the crazy Middle Eastern occupation programs. Another person, Reed, says, most people casting a ballot are not cognizant of the potential consequences of their choices. The real-world tragic effects are not foreseen or taken seriously because they aren't wise as serpents. What they've tried to do to Trump, the elevation to a quasi-messianic status, and the ruthless attempts to demonize him. Another listener says, the demonization is the thing that really bothers me. Once someone thinks someone is a Nazi talking, reason and cooperation are out the window. That's what they want, though, no cooperation. And again, I don't think they know that they want that. I think it's something where, forgive them, Father, they don't know what they're doing. When you get caught up in the passion of a crowd, even if that crowd is not physically in proximity to one another, but, is shared through values on Twitter or whatever, you're going to have a scenario where you can convince yourself of the most heinous, horrible stuff, and you feel totally justified in feeling those ways and talking those ways and just being an awful person to people who've done nothing to you. So, I have people telling me all day about how wonderful it is for, the vulnerable in our society that Biden has been installed. And I say 50 years of locking people up for nonviolent crimes, 50 years of saying yes, sir, to the military industrial complex whenever they tell them to jump and send some bombs to some innocent people just so they can cause chaos overseas and make money, keeping perpetual occupation going. This is ridiculous. And we know it. And the clarity will come as we continue to focus on the victims of these operations, even when the media tries to make us believe that we've got some kind of Mickey Mouse installed who's going to be a wonderful person. So joining me now is retired Lieutenant Colonel Karen Kwiatkowski. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Enjoyed listening to you just now. That was we need to hear more of that on the airwaves.
Well, I want to let people know a little bit about you. You had a career in U.S. Air Force and intelligence. You also were a Department of Defense whistleblower. You're an author. You're a scholar. A lot of your work is at LouRockwell.com, which publishes some of my articles as well. So I wanted to have you on because it's Veterans Day, and I want to kind of get your take. We can go anywhere with this, but particularly about the foreign policy aspect, just kind of get where we stand today. We don't know who's going to be the new, president or whatever yet, but where do you see foreign policy going in this time?
Well, like you mentioned, some of the sentiments that Donald Trump had about bringing troops home, I think that's part of why he was elected in 2016, because he used that as part of his platform, to stop some of these interventions and end some of these endless wars. And he did a little bit of that. He didn't do as much of it as a lot of us would have wanted. And that's an important thing. That's the best thing you can do for veterans, is make fewer of them. To really recognize the sacrifices that they make, and make sure that they're only doing that when the security of our country is at stake. Which in these overseas things that we've had, the security of our country has never been at stake. I mean, you have to go way back to think about a time when the security of our country was at stake. So, our veterans are created by the state that does so for its own reasons and its own purposes. Very often, like you mentioned, is to make money, to ensure your friends are making money, that kind of thing. And that's not very respectful, to create, veterans and war-scarred citizens so somebody else can make money, because certainly those citizens aren't benefiting. Where it's going, it's not clear who's going to be the president. It would be nice in the next month and a half, when we still have Trump as president, if he would really aggressively try to complete some of the bringing troops home, ending some of these conflicts. I think he should also add to his list pardoning Julian Assange and firing Gina Haspel. These would be some good things that he could do in his last month and a half. And if it doesn't turn out that way, if he is going to, if he retains the presidency, which is not clear who it is, I don't really. I don't think I think it's a little early when we have so many lawsuits and recounts going on to really say. But if it's Biden, we're in trouble, I think, because Biden represents what Bush Cheney represented, what Obama represented with his interventions. And Biden also, despite the fact that I think one of his sons served in uniform, Biden is very much of the elite class that does not serve and doesn't have family members that serve, and doesn't really connect or understand those who go into the military and really, truly a lot of patriotic people. I don't think Biden gets that, and I don't think most of Biden's supporters are of that ilk either, which means it won't matter if some of them die. It doesn't matter if veterans die. It doesn't matter if veterans are created. It doesn't matter if soldiers die. If the state is satisfied, and he's of that attitude, so I don't think it bodes well that he may be going, getting 4 years.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. He said he's only going to serve one term, and I don't know the condition that he's in right now.
Well, I actually believe him. I believe him on that because of his condition. Yeah, right. I think that's a fair assessment. But in those 4 years, any president can do incredible amounts of damage. The office has become so powerful that the executive bureaucracy is so great and massive that it doesn't take long for a lot of damage to be done. I think a lot of these neocons, which are many of them are part of the Never Trump group or the Lincoln Project, or they're Democrats that never left the Democratic Party. Many of these folks are very angry that Trump made the progress that he did make in bringing troops home out of the Middle East and, trying to reduce interventionism and democracy programs around the world that, democracy at the point of a sword, which is how they seem to like to do it. I guess that's how you make the most money. But in any case, Biden is he's staffing with these people. These are his friends. This is the viewpoint that he shares. And I worry a little bit that his mental capacity is not probably where it needs to be, or maybe his endurance level is not where it needs to be. And so even if he doesn't agree with these folks, if they're surrounding him, they will have their way with him in terms of policy directions. So, it's not good. In fact, we might be able to thank the, maybe the Black Lives Matter movement will agree with us on this, that we shouldn't be sending people around the world to die for crony capitalism. Maybe they'll buy into this and exercise some control over a Democratic president. But it's not clear to me. I think they're washing their hands of the BLM and Antifa. They're afraid of those guys.
And I'm
sure we all are, but I doubt those guys will even be able to influence the Biden administration. They'll have as much influence as Republicans do.
And Joe Biden, you know, he's had a history of confusing his wife and his sister and what state he's in and what office he's running for. I'm worried about what someone
That's
like
right.
that would do with the nuclear code. He might hit the wrong button to the wrong. He might hit Florida trying to get after Syria or something. You know, I don't know what this guy's going to be up to.
I mean,
This guy's going to
that's
be.
a legit concern.
He could be chewing
I
on
think one of the
oatmeal
things
and shooting off missiles, not knowing which way he's going. You know, so I thought that was my sister.
That's
Wait a
right.
second, where's my
Well-
uncle? Where's Saddam? I'm going to kill Saddam. Where's Saddam in Saudi Arabia? I mean, come on, we don't have time for this kind of insanity.
Nope. Well, I would like to see the media, and once we get a president decided and they're finished kind of covering, and once he's president, I would like to see them explore issues like that. How good is our control over our deadly nuclear arsenal? What are some of the procedures and checks in place to make sure that an aging, senile president, I mean, heck, they could have done this under Trump. They didn't really bother with it. He's aging, but he's not senile. Now here with Biden, we have real concerns. And I think also with, these vice presidents are generally chosen to make sure that the president isn't assassinated, right? I mean, the guy's got to be weaker and worse than you are. And, but in the case of Biden-Harris, just with Biden's health and everything, I mean, Harris could emerge. And what an unprepared person to have, with their hand on the nuclear button. These are very concerning things, and I hope the mainstream media will look into these things and explore them once they're done with, because I do think the news on coronavirus is going to die down a bit once Joe's in place.
Right.
I don't think we'll be hearing the daily frenetic panic reports. It'll be under control. Joe's doing a great job, and they can spend time on some other important issues like nukes and war. But it's very, very disappointing.
It's interesting, the news that Pfizer apparently was not in touch with President Trump. When they announced their thing, they were talking to Biden already. Yeah.
Sure. And I guess the Pfizer, one of the guys is a big donor to Biden. And the other thing that it was funny to me, and again, the media does such a poor job. Pfizer said, "Hey, we're not part of Operation Warp Speed," which is the program where we put all that money into a military contractor hand and then let the military contract out to the various vaccine developers. And Pfizer was very proud to say, I wasn't, we weren't part of Operation Warp Speed, so this is not an Operation Warp Speed success, which could indeed be true.
Right.
But they took, millions and millions of dollars. I think it was over $1 billion Pfizer was able to get in government grants directly. So, the idea that they didn't, it's so, the framing, Trump had nothing to do with it. Well, guess what? The taxpayer pays for everything, either now or in the future. So plenty of subsidies were given to Pfizer, and I thought it was funny that the Pfizer execs were pulling out their, we're taking their. I think that the CEO sold almost 2/3 of his holdings of Pfizer today or yesterday. I don't know when. Right after they announced. So but he wasn't part of Operation Warp Speed. Look, they're all part of the crony capitalist government system we have that we pay for, but we don't know very much about. And I, again, would love to see the media, when it relaxes a little bit and we get this election decision behind us, will they look into some of these things? Because it's going to be important. I think a lot of people who voted for Biden or maybe they didn't vote for Biden, but they thought, well, this will be good. This will be fine. It'll work out well. They don't really know. They don't know what they're getting. And I think as things start rolling down, they may be very upset by some of the things that are coming, because philosophically, while both parties are kind of the same, Republican, Democrats, they're both fighting over the middle voter, the peak of the bell curve. They have to have that to get their 50% or their 51%. But Biden folks, and you can just pick on Harris if you want to, but Biden's part of this. They say he's pragmatic, but they're very much into power, state power, centralization of state power. They're very much into federal mandates. How do we make the states obey? And Trump was not that way. And he liked to make an executive order. He certainly tweeted a lot. But Trump, coming from the business side, understands the value of kind of entrepreneurialism and competition, like the whole way the federalism was supposed to be set up. The various states could do what they needed to do and experiment. 50 different lab experiments to see what works best. Trump likes that Biden does not buy into that. No, Biden is the emperor. So, or at least I think he feels like that is what his role should be. This is not good, and people will not be happy with what rolls down.
Yeah.
And the people, at least 51%, but I would think it's probably closer to 75 or 80% of people will not be happy, because even people who voted for Biden, they're not thinking, oh, he's going to control everything. They don't really they're not asking Biden to control every part of their life. They're just saying, well, let's get rid of one guy. Let's go back to a friendlier, less conflictual government. There's many reasons why they might have voted for him. But when he delivers on what they granted him, if it turns out that he is the president-elect, when he delivers on what he promises and what he believes, and the people that he's surrounding himself with, we're going to be a lot of people are going to be unhappy, not just libertarians, not just the Republicans. A lot of other people who don't even pay attention to politics will not be, they'll not be pleased. And certainly if he starts creating conflict abroad, very, very dangerous and very, very bad, and certainly disrespectful to veterans on this Veterans Day. I mean, this is, we like to honor our veterans, but we need to think more deeply about what causes them and how the empire, how D.C. actually views veterans. And I don't know if you've noticed it has been reported, it's a long-term trend, but many of our military people come from smaller and smaller demographic groups. Your poor southern agricultural kind of, that's, families that were in the military. This is where we get our military enlistees from. We don't get them from a lot of other places. We do not get them from urban areas. Right. That's not who populates our military. And if you think that the contempt that both sides of this presidential race in the last year, the contempt that each side had for the other, and certainly the aggressive, angry contempt that the Democrats had for Trump voters and Trump supporters, that matches the contempt that this group of folks and their philosophy holds towards members of our military. Right. Because the members of the military don't come from their demographic. In fact, this is why military ballots are in the trash. If they are in the trash, why would you throw them in the trash? Because they're not for Biden.
That's why I'm telling folks that's why I'm telling folks who are Republican that you need to really rethink your undying loyalty to wanting to get your kids into the military, because you see now what it's doing. It's a perpetual war machine. It's globalist. Yeah, it's teaching social justice, radical critical theory. It's nothing like what people imagine in their head, and people need to wake up, because why should you encourage your children to enlist in a military which is going to be used in a contemptuous, disgusting way by people who despise them and possibly rob them of their vote? I mean, it's insane, the utter contempt that these elites have for folks. Joshua, our listener online, says they'll just change the phrasing. Speaking of the new regime, possibly, it's not endless wars, but providing assistance to some poor, war-torn people who just want democracy. You don't want Syria to gas or children to starve, etc. And I mean, that's the problem. Do you think, this is a kind of a technical matter, I know that Biden has surrounded himself and embraced the neoconservatives of the Republican Party, but then you've also got the globalists who are, more of the, I guess the Zbigniew Brzezinski style foreign policy interventionists. Which of those two flavors of intervention do you see him doing? Do you see him doing a whole, American exceptionalism, hawkish foreign policy, or do you think he's going to do the globalists? We're just going to be a little token of the global organizations, WTO, WHO, UN, so forth.
Well, I honestly think he's going to go in both places because, the globalist type of positioning, I think, is where he's philosophically more friendly and comfortable. Soros has helped fund Democrats for a long, long time. And this philosophy, this globalism, is very much a part of much of the Democratic Party, including even the far left wing is globalist. They're certainly not nationalists, or even they're very much the broad community, and it fits in with the greening or the new green. What is it? The new green plan that they have. Environmentalism is very much of that. So I think his intention and his energy will be towards the Soros side, but his financial backers and the people that keep him in power and keep the media and hold the media and own the media are defense companies, and they want to sell arms, and they need to have justification to sell arms. They need to have justification to compete, to invest in next generation warfare, which now includes AI and a whole bunch of other things. And so that will also go forward unimpeded. See, Trump didn't make his money in the military. He made his money in real estate. And real estate people don't like to see buildings fall down. They really don't, because that's an investment. But military loves to see things break, because that means I get more money to make new things to break. Yeah. So it's, the neocons there, and not just neocons, but the way that our economy is oriented is very much towards the export of war and war technologies, and to some extent intelligence technologies. But we have a lot of competitors around the world that do even a better job than we do with that. But we have some, we have some product streams that there are people in this country need to continue funding. And these guys own most of the media. I mean, I think General Electric and some of these others, Raytheon, they own media companies. They are the big investors. So war sells and war maintains their bottom line. And the other thing where these two things merge, where the Soros globalism and environmentalism merge with the war machine and the war empire, is with the fact that our country is in, I don't know, what is it, 24, 25, 27 trillion annual debt, unfunded liabilities in the coming 15 or 20 years are in the, $200 or $300 trillion as our people retire. That's crazy. That can't be paid back. And how do you deal with both a restless domestic group that says, you promised me my Social Security, but I can only buy one loaf of bread a month with it. Right. That's not what you promised. And, the people that lent you money around the world, how do you default on that debt? How do you manage the money? The only way they could have borrowed this much in the United States was because the dollar is a reserve currency. Let's take
a quick commercial break. We're speaking with Lieutenant Colonel Kwiatkowski, who is retired from the U.S. Air Force. He also worked in the Pentagon. We'll be back in just a moment to wrap things up. Don't miss it. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals, join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Kwiatkowski. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Kwiatkowski will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Kwiatkowski. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Kwiatkowski.com. Over 28 years in practice. Kwiatkowski, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Kwiatkowski, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck on a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender. Reflecting on foreign policy on this Veterans Day, we return on A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski here with Lieutenant Colonel retired from the U.S. Air Force, Kwiatkowski, who's a writer and a PhD as well. And I wanted to ask you, Karen, you worked in the Pentagon, and we're almost out of time here, but I just wanted to give a little moment to say, what was it like there when these folks were sending people off to war? Did you ever see the humanity pop out and say, maybe this is not right, maybe we need to stop?
Yeah. It's hard to say. A lot of the people that wear the uniform, active duty, they're very enthusiastic about what they do. And, it's really, the questioning comes from folks that have gone 2 or 3 or 4 times to do the same thing. The multiple deployed folks over in Afghanistan and Iraq who over and over, tour after tour, they get a little break, they go back thinking ground has been gained, and they realize this is not just futile. It's really dumb, makes no sense, and we're not accomplishing anything. And those folks generally retire, and if they make rank high enough, they still retire. We don't make generals out of people that are questioning the policy. Very rarely you'll find a 1 or 2 star, 3-star general who retires and then immediately does criticize the foreign policy. But, for the most part, they're team players, and they often, like all of us in the country, kind of have to see it with their own eyes. They kind of have to experience the stupidity in person before they can realize how insane it is. Because on paper, you're like, well, I'm here, I'm serving my country, I'm patriotic, I work with other patriotic people, we're all doing a good thing. And what we have to do, just like they have been forced to do, these folks that have actually had to go into combat for no good reason, and they know it. Like them, maybe we don't have to go into combat, but maybe we should think about what we're having them do and try to learn from them. And there's plenty of folks, you might call them whistleblowers or dissidents, but there's plenty of stories out there, both real time, in our time, in our era, and also guys from the 30s and all previous wars who tell the truth about war. And that's what we need more of, more people to tell the truth about it.
Well, very good. It's always great to have truth tellers like you, Karen, on our program. Where can people follow your work if they want to keep in touch?
Yeah, I write for Lou Rockwell about once a month or so, not a lot. And there's another group that you had my phone number from that group, the Eisenhower Media Network. That's newly launched, and I'll be there too.
Well, very good. I appreciate you coming on the program, Karen.
Glad to do it. Good talking to you.
Well, that's it for hour 1 of A Neighbor's Choice. But remember, folks, there's real victims behind the policies that you hear about on paper, like she said, or like television. Real human beings that are going to be torn apart by careless policy. It's time to repent of our participation in them. We'll be back in just a moment for our second segment. Godspeed.